Today on Uncut, we have Victoria Maldonado. Victoria, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, so Victoria, you are a book author. You have been writing since you were 9 years old. And we know that at this age, kids want to play and just have fun with their friends. So what inspired you to start writing?
Well, at that age, I don't know. I had a very weird social interaction issue. I don't know what it was exactly, but my brother and I were always kind of treated a little bit older than we were. So I didn't understand the crazy kids that wanted to just go off and play. Like I had stuff going on in my head. I had ideas. I had creative things. And my mom's a reading teacher, or was until she retired. And so she was always into books. So we did a lot of reading and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I always felt a little bit older than my peers. So it was a weird interaction thing. So I basically just started creating stories, and some of them never went anywhere, but a lot of them kind of did little things. But yeah, kind of a way to create my own kind of adventure circle, I guess.
Wow, you're very, very young. And Victoria, what makes you laugh? This is just a curious fact about you that I want to know, and of course our listeners, because you have a beautiful smile and I'm sure there is something that makes you laugh more than other things.
I don't know. My son makes me just laugh hysterically. He's hilarious. I like when people twist language in a very creative way. That's always been really interesting to me. And that started with my grandfather when I was little. He had the best wordplay ever. So he would just do really funny twists of phrases, and that's how I started loving language, actually. But yeah, anybody who can really twist words around in a funny way, that gets me cracking up. That just makes me really laugh.
So. That's good. And you like learning new languages, yeah?
Yeah, I love new languages. I know bits and pieces of a lot of different ones just because I've traveled all over, mostly Europe, but I've traveled a lot. And when I go to a place, I always make sure I know enough to get around. So.
And which languages do you speak?
I speak Spanish and French very well. I've dabbled in Italian, German, Czech, Slovak, Polish, Croatian, a little bit of Greek. I've tried Portuguese. It's intimidating because the letters don't sound the same.
We can speak Portuguese.
Yeah, I know, but it's deceptively wants to be similar to Spanish, but it's really not. So it takes a lot of attention to figure that one out. I know a little bit of Russian, some Japanese because I did some martial arts. Any language that I come across, I absorb, and I'm good at finding the patterns. Oh, German too. Did I say German? I don't even know. And a little bit of Dutch. I've worked with some Dutch companies. So yeah, it's all over the place. Any languages I can get to. Here's a funny story. So a friend of mine was dating a girl whose family was Norwegian. And so I took it upon myself to learn one sentence in Norwegian so I could talk to her in Norwegian. And all I learned was it's very nice to meet you, but she loved the effort I put in and she thought it was hilarious. So.
Oh my God, it's so difficult. Interesting. And Victoria, your book genre, what kind of genre do you write?
Yeah, I write adults, women's fiction, which is the 3 above my head. That's what I started in. So basically romance, but it's not definitely not lighthearted. So what I started writing and what I do mostly is women's fiction, a romance genre. They're not exactly lighthearted, but they're definitely in that genre. That's the trilogy above my head. I've also written some children's books, and you can see one off to the side. And then I've also edited and put forth a poetry anthology. And I just recently, it came out a few days ago, contributed a story to a nonfiction kind of piece about what it's like to be a woman. So I kind of dabble in all the genres, and it's fun to branch out and see what happens.
This is interesting. And how many books in total did you write?
I've got these 3. I've got 2 children's, but well, I've written a 3rd children's book, but it's not illustrated yet. And then I have short stories in a couple, so I'd say 5, 6, 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I'm still going too.
And I'm curious to know, how do you handle writer's block? Because for me, it's terrible. When I start like being blocked, I said, oh, how can I finish this book? So
sometimes it gets incredibly frustrating, but I've learned to take it as a blessing. The best thing I do when I get that feeling coming on of writer's block, I get up and I do something completely unrelated. I refuse to sit and torture myself and make myself, I have to write this now. I have to do this particular thing. I like to write when it feels like I should be writing. And I work well under pressure as well. But for example, I had a short story that I needed to write for an anthology, and it was killing me. It just, I wasn't sure what to do. It was in a genre that wasn't quite comfortable. It was young adult, and my books are a little more elevated than that. And I'd never done it. And so I'm like, well, what am I supposed to write about? So instead of sitting there and banging my head against the desk which a lot of writers will do, I got up and I started doing laundry. And as I was folding some clothes, I was like, oh my God, I have an idea. And then of course I pulled out my phone and I sketched out a few ideas that I had, and then I came back to it later. So for me, it's just completely taking your mind off of what's torturing you. And then, but kind of keeping it in the background a little bit, and then coming back to it as inspiration hits. That's kind of how I deal with it.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do. You know, sometimes I stop and I exercise. I try to do some yoga or Pilates. But what happens all the time to me when I'm writing a book, I wake up during the night with an idea, and then I cannot sleep anymore.
I always get up and write it down. I have a journal next to me. So if that ever happens, I jot down the basics of it, 3 to 5 minutes tops. And then I can come back to that when I wake up. And another thing I do when I'm working on one of the longer books, if I get to a point where I'm blocked, sometimes I'll start and I'll just start reading what I've already written. And it's kind of like getting a running start. I do that a lot. So like I haven't worked on my next novel in a few weeks. And so when I go back to it, I will read what I've already done, and that'll give me that momentum to keep going. So that's another technique. Yeah.
It is a good thing to do. I try sometimes also to do it. Sometimes it doesn't help, but it's a try. So, and Victoria, how do you come up with your titles?
Yeah, the titles are very significant, and they come at different points in the book. The title, for the first one, it has a lot of different meanings to the book, but it came way, way, way late in the process. I'm not exactly sure when it came, but it was very late in the process. But the "in death we part," in English, there's a very popular marriage phrase, "till death we part," or "until death we part." And I want that to get into the reader's brains. That's very intentional, because there is a marriage element at some point in the book that is very significant to some of the characters. But the death part and parting at death, at the beginning of the book, Brianna loses her parents to a car accident. So it's literally "in death we part." But then I want readers to also think about that phrase, because it does play into the story. And then "Running in the Mist," which is the middle one, the main character is a runner. And mist is like a cloudy, confusing, not very clear situation. And that's exactly what she's going through. There's a lot of running going on in the book, and then it's that confusion. And then "Awake in Elysian Fields" has quite a few different meanings to it. Elysian Fields is the English rough translation of the Champs-Elysees in Paris. which is that big thoroughfare that you can actually see coming down from
Yes,
the channel.
yeah, the
Yeah.
trio.
Yeah, it's just the Champs-Élysées, and it's just a big thoroughfare, but it's also it's a mythical concept of the Elysian Fields, or Elysium, which is a place where heroes go to enjoy the spoils after achieving a big victory. And an awakening is because she's coming out of this fog of confusion and awakening to the facts of what her life should be and what it should become. So I love to play with many different levels in my titles. Until I hit on the exact one, I do not title anything. I've been working on my new book for on and off for the last 6 months or so. About 2 weeks ago, I decided on a title because finally something made sense. So, but yeah, it depends. I mean, this title I had from the very beginning. I don't know exactly why. But yeah, this one I think I had from the beginning too, but this one came way late. So it really depends. I love having those multiple significant meaning layers, because then when the reader goes back afterwards and reflects on the title, they're like, oh, that and that and that and that and that and that and that, and then it just kind of gives extra meaning to the story, I think.
And what's your favorite book?
Ever? Oh God. I don't know my own. No, just kidding. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's a particular book that I would absolutely go back to say, hey, that's my book. But I am eternally fascinated by Shakespeare. And it might seem like an English cop-out, but I love his use of language and his just innovation, and that his themes still like resonate truly with us. So I really would just say his folio, just because there's so much in there, and you can't go wrong.
Like it. Yeah, I also like it so much. And about characters, we were talking about Elysian Fields, and you have the main character is called Elise. Yeah,
Elise.
Like her personality is inspired by someone in your life, or maybe yourself.
There's aspects of her that are kind of inspired from experiences that I myself went through. But she's really her own person. I couldn't really pinpoint anyone particular that she's really based on. But since she was brought up as a character in my second book, and she was actually mentioned in the first book, but nobody really notices it unless they go back and read it again after the second book. And I'm not going to spoil that, but she kind of had some required personality constructs and situational things that had happened to her that built her personality. So she's suffering from intense trauma from her childhood, but she had a great upbringing after that point in the trauma. So those things really come into play. And then she has some more trauma in college. So it's kind of like, it's knowing the backstory of the character is super essential for me. I mean, I often write pages and pages and pages of stuff that never even make it into the book, but it's important for me to know what's happened to them in the past. So then it kind of creates their decision patterns.
And if your book, Awaken in Elysian Fields, if there was a film adaptation, okay, for your novel, Awaken in Elysian Fields, which actress would you choose to interpret her character?
Yeah, I've actually thought about this a lot. And there's one younger actress. Her name is Chloe Moretz. She's been in a number of things, but she's kind of almost the blonde ingenue, but she's not that picture perfect, pretty, everything's together type of actress. I just think I've seen her do amazingly involved emotions, like dark emotions in her acting. And I've also seen her do really funny and uplifting. So yeah, and her look kind of matches the character as well. But yeah, so it would be Chloe Moretz. So if Chloe is watching, hit me up.
Maybe let's see. Maybe can become a movie. Who knows?
Well, and then I know the actress for Brianna, who's in the first two books too. Her name is Molly Quinn, and she was an actress on a show called Castle. And I've loved her since I saw her in that, and she's still barely in the age range for it. So we need to get moving on that.
I'll make sure to tag them both. Okay.
Fantastic.
And Victoria, what comes first, characters or plot?
It depends on the book that I'm writing. And I was thinking about this the other day too. And for my first book, it was most definitely the characters, simply because I was basically given the cowboy character, a character sketch of that character, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I built it off of that character and its interaction with a character that I was creating. But then those characters drove the plot of the second book. So, and then in the third book, there was this new character release, and I already knew a lot about her character, but I also already knew a lot about the plot. So it kind of interwove and was developed together. It just kind of wove in and off of it about that. And then as I was doing character research into some of the supporting characters, it just kind of snowballed. Their characters got developed as I was researching other elements. So I don't know if there's a clean answer for that one. But.
Yeah, and there are some recurring elements, as we're talking about elements that you always put in your books.
Yeah, and it's not really, it has never been intentional, but I was looking back at it and I was like, I always do that, don't I? So in every single book, there's at least one or two pieces of jewelry that's really significant. And like in the first book, her mother and father's wedding rings kind of become a necklace for her. And there's also a copper medallion that is given to Matt Brennan by someone who's really close to him, and that becomes significant moving forward. In the second book, it's a heart locket that is actually based on a locket in my own family, and it's like an heirloom locket that gets passed down, and it gets stolen at one point. And then that locket also makes an appearance in the third book, but then also the third book has actually this cross in it, but I switched. These are stones from the U.S. Southwest area, but in the book I switched out the stones to be native to France. So I took this as an inspiration, and this is actually on the back cover of the book. So yeah, there's something and there's something really significant about the cross to the characters. It actually comes from her mother in a roundabout way, and so yeah, so definitely jewelry, also songs. I don't know, music moves everyone. So I always put songs that are significant in my life in the books. And I always credit, the artists if I go into them in depth. But yeah, something that's moved me about a particular song, but that's also significant to the characters, I'll include those as well.
And another question for you, Victoria, is you are an editor as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
And how do you know that a book is a good book and you want to publish it?
Yeah, so really, not every writer is also an editor, and it took me a while to understand that, because I'm both, and I do quite a lot. I do both quite a lot. But yeah, so when I'm reading a manuscript, when I know that it's a good story, it's that it has to affect me in some way. So I have to resonate with it. It might not generally be what I read all the time. I mean, I've read books of all different genres, and it's not always my favorite thing to read, but there's some element of it that's like, that strikes me. That's important. And then it's also the structure that the author has put in. Grammar, that's my job. Fixing the grammar, that's something that not everybody cares about or knows about. But with the structure, it's like, are you intentional about putting in an element here that's going to come back here, that's also going to come back here? So it's looking at those pieces and on a technical way, but also, yeah, it's the feel of it.
It's the feeling. And
Yeah.
you have to read the whole manuscript, or you just start reading and say, no, this is a good,
Yeah.
this is not.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I know it within a chapter or two if it's going to be something worth working with. Because I mean, number one, your first chapter has to grab that reader. It has to get you into the story and make you start asking questions. It doesn't have to reveal everything, and it shouldn't, but it needs to get you thinking and being curious about what's going on with these characters. And if it doesn't grip you like that, and it doesn't have to be startling, it doesn't have to be, action packed, and there's not one way to do it. But it has to make you start wondering. And if you're not wondering by chapter 3, you're just like,
yeah, it's boring, like.
Yeah, like, come on, get on with it.
And what advice would you give to someone who wants to get published?
Well, one thing is write authentically, which basically means write something or that you're passionate about. If you do not love what you're writing and it's not from your heart, why are you doing it anyway? Because the readers can feel it. The readers can see it. Even with children's books or with adult fiction, if you obviously don't care about it, your readers won't either. So that's a huge piece of advice. And I get that with songs and songwriters too. There's certain bands and songwriters, I will not listen to them because every song has no passion, and it's just, if the singers can't be passionate and feel what they're presenting, why would anyone else? That's from like the inspirational side of the question. But from a technical side, get on social media, start talking to other writers, start seeing where did you publish? How did you publish? Is independent publishing the way I should go, or should I try to submit to an agent or a publisher? You have to start those conversations, because when you're first starting out, you don't even know what's out there. And different publishing houses accept different kinds of manuscripts or different ways to get to them. And it's very complicated and very just exhausting. But there's a lot of different ways out there, and definitely get an editor because some of the stuff out there is just absolutely horrible because they were like, oh, my stuff's great and I don't need to change anything. But you do sometimes.
Thank you. That's good to know. And I have 3 words for you, and I would like you could tell me what you think about it, or what is your idea about it. Okay? So the first question for you is something I love. It's success. I love asking people, what is success for you?
Success for me is fulfillment and happiness. Being happy with what I produce, being happy with what I've put out into the world, that for me is success. I mean, I'm not making it completely rich yet doing this, but I could in the future, I have no idea. But like for me, putting something out into the world that is great and resonates with people, that for me is success.
That's good. Yeah, because success is very subjective. Yeah. Subjective. For example, for some people, selling 20,000 books, wow, this is success. But I believe that also not only about the money. It's not only about the money. If someone tells me, wow, I love your character, I love what happened in the story, this is success. Even if I just sold, like, let's say 200 books or 50 books, it's important.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the best comments I've ever gotten from my first book, I've had several people come up to me and just say, I cried so hard. I am heartbroken. oh my God, I cried. And that was the point. That was what I had hoped. And it gets happier as you go through. But yeah, no, like that's a huge success. Like I've touched you. I made you actually cry.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And oh, this is funny. I'm telling that someone told you made her cry. It's beautiful.
I know. But I mean, it was the point and the goal of that thing. I mean, I was sobbing when I was writing it. So that somebody else loved that character so much that they just could not handle it. Like that's yay.
This is a blessed. So Dream, what is your dream, or what are your dreams?
My dream is that I can continue to do this full time and still, be able to, give some support back to my family. I'm at the point where like I know I'm good at what I do, and it's just I would like to be able to just be able to focus on that. Instead of focusing on, oh God, can I pay this bill? And that kind of thing. I mean, a lot of people see my covers and they're like, well, I don't know if I'd be interested. I'm like, okay, give it a shot, because I tell you, it's gonna take you to dark places, but it's also gonna take you to really amazing, happy places, and you just got to get in there. But I'm terrible at selling my own work. It's kind of a bad thing.
Yeah, but it's So mission.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. My mission is to be able to get people to interact with books on a real, authentic, visceral level. Like for my novels, I want people to go into them and come out changed a little bit. Because one of the main themes, once I look back at the entire trilogy, I realized one of the main themes is that you can go into the darkest depths of despair, but you can come out of that. And how you come out of that is the way you were meant to come out of that. So it's taking those dark experiences, those negative experiences, those really not good things that have happened to you, and not dwelling on it, but getting past it and moving toward a brighter future. So, and that's kind of the theme that kind of goes across all three of those. For my kids' books, I want to create good books that are fun to read. They're adventurous. The language is beautifully rhyming, and parents love them as much as kids love them. And I want those to have a really good message, going out into the world. I mean, the few that I've done so far, one's about kindness, one's about love and compassion, and how that makes a ripple effect into the world. So really for those ones, I have a more specifically tight mission for each of them. But yeah, just books in general, having people understand that books are not just objects. They're not pieces of paper. They're living, breathing things that let you interact with other worlds and have adventures. I mean, if the world could understand that, we'd have a much more sensible population in general, because the more you read, the more you expand your mind, the more you explore and put yourself in other people's shoes. So I think it's a big mission, but I think it's worthwhile.
It's a very good mission. And when you tell me about books, it's like, I love books. Like, I know we have audiobooks, we have ebooks, but I need to have the physical book.
I know. My physical books, yeah. Oh, I know. I love the smell of a book. I love the feel of a book. I mean, I do a lot of audiobooks just because I don't have a lot of time to sit down with a book these days, and I still want to keep reading. So yeah, I listen to audiobooks when I'm doing mundane tasks, but no, but I love having the physical book. Like for me, if my book's not a physical book, it's not a book.
Exactly. Do you think the books are going to disappear somehow eventually?
I really don't think books will ever really disappear, because there will always be people writing stories. Humans just in general need to tell their stories. It's just one of our innate things. But like books themselves, there's too many people in the world who love and adore books. So I don't think it'll ever go away. And ebooks and audiobooks don't really I don't think those compromise the physical book too much. They just make literature accessible to more people on different platforms. But to your point about the technology, I do fear that like video games and TV and movies do have a detriment to that. I've seen that with my own kids. And when they're just watching something, they're passive. They're just being passive with the story, versus when they're reading a book or we're reading a book together, we're interacting with it. We have to create our own pictures, our own thoughts, our own reactions to it. The movie is doing it for us, and it's moving at a pace that's constant. With a book, you can stop and sit down and really get into some topics. Like I'll be reading a book with one of my kids and they'll stop me. They're like, "Mommy, I need to ask you a question." And we'll stop and we'll talk about it's something that was confusing, or maybe it's a text to self connection. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, I remember when we did something like that." And that's just huge reading comprehension. So books enable you to have more of that interaction, which I think is a valuable thing. I'm going to be a proponent for them never to go away. Number one, it's my profession, but number two, it's just essential for us to interact. I mean, some of the stories that have been passed down through the generations are books, and it's essential that we read and learn from those older pieces. There's a great thing about classic literature. Some of them aren't as accessible today just from modern sensibilities, but the lessons within the great books are really essential to keep with us. So I really hope books don't go away. I would be so sad, but I make sure my kids have a good balance of, making sure they're reading, making sure they get some, passive time on the TV too, but it's important to keep everybody reading.
Yes, it's very important. And I'll tell you, the best weekends I used to spend with my daughter was when we used to go to the beach, and we take our books, and we were there. I was reading my book, she was reading my book, and sometimes she was making some comments about it. And it's fascinating because books teach us so much. We can travel with the books, like you. Like I'm really planning to take your book to the beach in June, hopefully, and sit there on the sand and be able to read.
Well, it allows you to travel, and especially in this time where we're not traveling so much, if you feel like, oh, I just want to, get to Prague, or I want to get to Paris, you find a book that takes place in that setting. There's books everywhere about every location. There's this one reader challenge going around on Facebook right now, and it's a US reader challenge, but it's basically a map of the United States, and you basically have to read a book that's set in every state. I mean, over time, but it's a really cool challenge. And I mean, I've read so much, I'd hate to start from the beginning again. But no, it's because every book set in different places, even around the US and especially around the world, they're so very different just because of where they're set. Like I've read several Romanian books recently in English, but I know like 2 words in Romanian. But no, I mean, it's been interesting learning kind of how that culture works, and through its literature, because that's another piece. You learn how other people, other cultures, other places work through the lens of how the writer's presenting it. So that's just fascinating by itself.
I used to write. I used to read Latin literature, like Garcia Marquez, and also
Isabel Allende.
I love Isabel Allende, and I love you learn so much. And Victoria, where can we find you and your books? Please give us your website. Where can we find all of them, the names, everything? And I'm sure they are very good.
Okay. The best place to go is my website. On that website, there's links to everything you could possibly want, and interviews I've done, and any kind of promotion. It's victoriajhyla.com. So Victoria with a C, and then J hyla.com.
Yeah,
And
everybody will see here now.
okay, good. Yeah, so that's the website. Everything's based off of that. If anyone needs an editor, my services are on there too.
Yeah.
So really everything is on there. So again, my 3 novels in my existing trilogy are In Death We Part, Running in the Mist, and Awake in Elysian Fields. I also have Bartleby the Brave, which is my first children's book, and a new one that's coming out very, very soon called Tears for the Butterfly, which is just so beautiful. I also, this is the poetry anthology that I worked on for a friend of mine. It's called The Evidence I Have Lived. And then I also have some short stories in some anthologies, and those anthologies are on the homepage as well. So everything's their own. This is Fu. I do a travel blog with him. He's been all over the United States and does weird photos and stories.
And is he on your website as well?
Yes, he's on there too, and the link to his blog is on there. Because I literally have taken him to more than 30 states, and he does weird things with just photographs doing weird things. Like he might find a giant Kool-Aid man. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kool-Aid man from back in the day. Like he'll like find weird statues. Like we went in Minnesota a couple of summers ago. We ran into the giant Jolly Green Giant, which is a U.S. brand for vegetables. It's a giant statue, and so Fu got to take pictures with him. Or it's people. Fu likes to go dancing and do karaoke. It's just weird. So Fu's my excuse to be weird. So.
And you have to bring Fu to Spain.
Oh yes, I would love to.
Flamenco.
He loves flamenco. Yeah, he's only taken a picture with like a painting of flamenco dancers, but oh my gosh, he would be a great flamenco dancer. He's very solid. He's heavy. So.
Wow. So Victoria, I think like many people really will enjoy this conversation because we covered many things about writing process of writing, and for sure if someone wants to have you evaluating their books, are you also doing this, or not?
Sorry. You mean
sorry, not evaluating, like checking it in case they want it to be published. Are you doing
yes. So I mean, if anybody, you can contact me through my website if you have a manuscript, and we are taking submissions from all over the world. We are. It's a little bit more complicated of a process than just in the U.S., but it's definitely an option. And they do need to be kind of already in English, but they don't have to be perfect yet because I do offer the editing services as part of the package. But yeah, if anybody is interested in that, my email is on my website. So feel free to go through that and at least, send me, hey, I have this book and, can I send it to you for an assessment? And then, I will definitely start that conversation, and I'm happy to.
That's awesome. So thank you very much, Victoria. It was very nice to talk to you. I talked to you before at the Relatable Voice. You can listen to Victoria also on the Relatable Voice podcast and also here. And thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.